All right, everybody, welcome back to Skywatchers Radio right here on Dark Matter Radio Network and on PSN Radio. With us, like we said earlier, we have the cast of Open Minds Radio, Mr. Alejandro Rojas and Jason McClellan. Welcome, guys, to Skywatchers Radio.
Thank you very much.
Hello, hello. Good to be here.
Alejandro's always fun hearing your voice, my friend. How you guys been the last couple of weeks?
Good. Busy as usual, but good.
You know, I just heard the last episode you guys did. Of course, we have your show leading into Skywatchers on PSN, and the show you guys did with the Mirage Men, the guys who wrote the Mirage Men and put the film out. Great story. I want to start with that. I mean, a great interview, by the way, Alejandro. Really, really cool interview. Covering that story. What do you think of that story? Do you think that there's any validity to what they're saying in that film?
Well, I think, like I told them, I really feel that this is one of the most important stories in ufology because I think it's kind of the low-hanging fruit as far as if we're going to prove the Air Force did involve itself in disinformation, this would be the case, I think, where we could do it. And not only that, I think that if they did, then, of course, that has implications itself, why they would do that, that kind of thing. However, I'm not so sure. I don't know. I kind of, at this point, I guess just to give a background for people who didn't hear the show, Mirage Men is mostly interviews with this guy named Richard Doty, who worked for Air Force Office of Special Investigation in the 80s. During that period of time, right when he came on with Air Force OSI, he began to be part of a disinformation campaign with a guy named Benowitz, who was a contractor with Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico, and said he was seeing UFOs and aliens above the base. He had enough pull where he was able to make some noise on the base, and they humored him. The official records, I did a FOIA on this, and the official records show they humored him, and they told him, it's not really our cup of tea, go away. Doty says, though, he was ordered to start a whole disinformation campaign. He worked with someone with the DIA, and he... he recruited Bill Moore, who was, kind of a superstar ufologist at the time, who just wrote the book on Roswell with Stanton Friedman's work, of course, breaking the Roswell story. A lot of people don't know. Nobody knew about Roswell till 1980 when this book came out. And finally, in 1989, Bill Moore came clean on this whole thing. The whole time, releasing information, some of it being disinformation, and the disinformation that stems from this period of time, and that's why it's important, is the Majestic 12 documents, the alleged Dulce base, the aviary, all of these kind of cornerstone mythologies that have its basis in admitted disinformation or possibly just completely hoaxed background. So that's why it's really important. I think that really, I'm going to post a letter that I wrote to the Air Force kind of demanding that they respond, that they say something, because either Doty really was under orders, which of course is a big deal because the things that he did are illegal. You can't run a campaign like this against an American citizen. Or two, he was doing it all on his own, but he was using Air Force and Kirtland resources, such as he brought Linda Moulton Howe to the base to tell her, to show her some hoax documents and things like this. So the Air Force knew about it, or this guy did all of this, telling Benowitz lied during the course of this. He lied to some senators. So he did this while he was an OSI agent for the Air Force. So either way, I think the Air Force has to say something about it. And it'd be great if kind of people jumped on the bandwagon to force them to do that, because it's a big deal. Not only that, people don't know the history. Everybody thinks Majestic 12 documents came out when this Shandera guy, who was partners with Moore during this time that Moore was secretly working with Doty, that's when the Majestic 12 documents came out. Not true. Majestic was part of this Doty thing from the beginning. and people don't know about that. So we're going to be writing a lot more about that also, but that's why this Mirage Men documentary is really important too.
No, it looks amazing. I'm going to actually check it out as soon as I have a chance. But
yeah.
Has Stan Friedman said anything about this yet? Because, I mean, he's part of the story.
Yeah, that's interesting. Not many people have interviewed Stanton Friedman because really this whole episode was a big embarrassment. When Bill Moore came out, it was a MUFON meeting and admitted to all of this. People got livid at Bill Moore. They wanted to forget he existed. They were really upset. Rightfully so. He was sharing information with the Doty on ufologists and hoaxing information. There's no way to justify that. Even though he likes to try to do that, he won't give interviews anymore. But in the few that he has, he tries to justify it. And when he came out, he did. I personally don't see the justification. Neither did his colleagues in the UFO field. So he kind of bowed out. Stanton Friedman, I think because of the respect that people have for him, he hasn't been interviewed very much. I know that what's his name? One of the Roswell researchers, Randall. Randall. I can't remember his first name right now, but
not Jesse.
Kevin Randall. He,
okay.
A lot of when the Majestic 12 documents came out, funny enough, the researchers at the time thought they were ridiculous. For the most part, 80% of them. Kevin Randall was there, and he always tells Friedman, well, why do you kind of gloss over the fact that Doty is the one who mentioned MJ-12 in a document he says he hoaxed? And he never got a response from Stanton. However, luckily, we have a good relationship with him, and I've known him for years, and I would consider him a friend. So last time he came to the office, we did interview him, and we're putting together a video where we've interviewed a lot of the players from that time, including Timothy Good, who, at least in a public forum, was the first to release the MJ.
I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Yeah, so we interviewed all of these guys, and Stanton admits, I asked him, well, how do you cope with that? And he says, I don't know. He really kind of doesn't have an answer, and he admits, I don't know.
Okay, can I throw out a question, by the way?
Yeah, go
ahead. Do it.
All right. Now, with all these papers and everything that was done and all the hoaxing that might have been done, which part of the government do you think really foot the bill for it to be done? And if someone was a paid disinfo person, where is the money trail? Where's the paper trail that incentivized him or her to make stuff up?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Great question, and we don't have any paper trail, which would lead the evidence. Actually, there is no evidence to say that Doty was not doing this all by himself. John Alexander believes, or at least not as a part of his official functions.
Why would he do this by himself, though? I mean,
I think it makes a lot of sense in this field. I mean, unfortunately, as you all know, we have a lot of hoaxers in this field.
Yes, we do. Yeah,
they need to sell more books. They need to plug their books.
Well, but that's not true. Most of the hoaxers are not selling anything. I mean, you look at a lot of these guys. Some of them are, certainly, and I don't want to throw out names because I don't know who you guys feel are hoaxers and who are not. We'd probably.
Look, I have no issues on calling out somebody who I think is a hoaxer, Michael Horn or Billy Myers. But let's not get too into name calling.
But those are good. Okay, you know what? I'll go there. Michael Horn. I don't think he's making a lot of money really off of this. He's making some, and certainly by perpetuating all of this, because I agree with you. He is making some money, but not really much money. I don't think enough to live off of. I know.
Yeah, but
Billy
you also got to remember
money off of this either. But they're getting notoriety. They're getting a following, and that's what Doty has gotten. Doty is now this legend. I mean, especially
cult following, my friend.
Yeah, Doty's got this cult following. I think that's why he did it. And in fact, I'm going to release a story soon, and I don't know that you can find somewhat of this story. All of this you can find bits and pieces all over the place. But Doty started doing this before he was with OSI. And Moore had talked about this a bit. Bob Pratt had talked about this. Bruce Maccabee had investigated this. The biggest story, and so many of these old stories just get lost to obscurity, is one written by Bob Pratt, where somebody wrote a hoax letter to the National Enquirer. At the time, Rob Pratt was the UFO guy, and at the time, it was a reputable newspaper where they would follow down things. You mean they didn't have Bat Boy? They didn't have Bat Boy or anything like that.
That's where Bat Squatch comes from. Bat Squatch comes from Bat Boy.
Bob Pratt didn't print the story because he couldn't confirm any of it, and he found out it was a hoax. And he even noted how he interviewed Doty and how Doty changed his story several times and had lied to him. And
so why can't why can we believe him? Why should we believe him now?
You can't. That's
exactly.
A great point. You can't believe him, so you just have to follow the paper trails, like Alan had brought up. You have to follow the documented information that we have. You have to put together the story of people like Bill Pratt or Timothy Good or others Stan Friedman, who were there and were involved. So you have to grab all of these pieces and parts from all over the place and put them together and try to figure something out. But unfortunately, a lot of what we know about these stories, or a lot of what's been put out there thus far, has been interviews with Doty and Moore, and I personally don't feel that we can put much stock in what either of these. You can't trust that they'll be completely honest.
With all these pieces of the puzzle, is there one clear picture being made from it?
There's a clear picture that the hoaxing happened. That MJ12, Dulce, Aviary, all of those.
All that's a hoax.
All of those stem from this incident. And so you have a clear picture of all of this, that these two senators were lied to. That's officially documented. That Benowitz went crazy because they tried to make him believe it was aliens and everything. That was their goal. He did. He wrote a lot of stuff. He worked with some ufologists and fell out with a lot of them and eventually had to be put into a mental institute. And when he came out of it...
But the Dulce base existed, correct?
No. There's no... Well, there, at least in this... Doty says that he wanted Benowitz to believe that. People don't even know the history of Dulce. Dulce comes from Benowitz.
Okay, but hang on. Didn't Jesse Ventura on his show before it got killed off find the Dulce base and
I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but you can't believe everything you see on TV. And especially when it comes to his show. I mean, they're so produced, and I don't know, I'm sure Jason, because he's on TV right now on this Hangar One, but we've both been on other shows, and Jason could definitely share with you that, you can't, these things are so produced, the facts are tweaked and manipulated.
Ratings.
I personally went into researching Dulce at first, and it led back to Doty, interesting enough, because I've had a fascination with this case forever. But when I lived in Colorado, I've been to Dulce, I've interviewed the people and spoken to people who have spent many times there, much time there. I've spoken to Gabe Valdez, who is a police officer, state police officer in New Mexico. He actually does believe there's some sort of base there. He doesn't believe it's extraterrestrial in nature, but he believes that there was possibly some cattle mutilation going on there. But he says he can't share any evidence that he has in relation to this, so kind of a dead end there.
That reminds me, whatever happened to the UFO, whatever happened to the cattle mutilations, there's really not been that much news of it, except for very, very recently that was shown to me the other day. Why did that whole mutilation flap get stopped or changed or whatnot?
Well, it's not necessarily the case. I mean, it does happen. It just doesn't get covered a lot, and it's not like it happens all the time and 100 cows are dead here and 100 cows are dead there. It's a couple cows here, a couple cows there. So if you get a handful in a year, that's pretty normal. So there were, I don't know, probably a good handful or two handfuls in 2013.
Really?
And Chuck Zukowski is really the one who does the best investigation on that. And that's the problem. A lot of times when ranchers find dead cattle, they say this sucks and they move on. They deal with it. But
I mean, how many of them actually go forward? Really, I mean, some of them don't want the kind of stigma that comes along with finding these kind of cattle's mutilated like this. I mean,
right, and I'm sure you run into the issue as well. If you do see something that seems a little askew, no blood, mysterious circumstances when you have dead cattle. Maybe you tell the local authorities and maybe they go, that's pretty bizarre. But do they go beyond that? Probably in most cases, no. So in a place like Colorado where Chuck Zukowski is, he's made a good name for himself. So if people have a feeling that there's bizarre circumstances surrounding the death of one of their cattle, they can research and they'll find he's there. He'll come and actually do an investigation because he knows what to look for. He knows what to do. You don't always have those resources in other places of the country.
And why is it only primarily in America? You really don't hear about it even from these other parts of the world, too. I mean, you don't see a flying saucer with Outback Steakhouse flying by anywhere, branded on it. I'm just trying to figure out.
Who even knows? I mean, really, we don't even know if it's aliens that are taking the cattle. For all we know, it could be some government program.
Well, that's what Gabe Valdez believes. So. And because really, there were a lot of them, a big rash of them in the 70s. And that's how Benowitz actually got involved with UFOs and aliens. He went to investigate that. So did Gabe Valdez. So did Senator Harrison Schmitt, which is one of the senators who tried to help Benowitz out, or at least was kind of friendly with him. But there was a big rash then in the United States, mostly in New Mexico, or kind of around the Dulce area. And that's why Gabe Valdez thought that there was something to there being a base there. But you're right, it hasn't been as frequent, but it does happen in other countries. Brazil has had a lot. South America has had some. I think it was last year or the year before, there were some in the UK, including sheep. There were a lot of sheep mutilated. So it does happen.
The first cow mutilation that I heard about was in Europe. So
really?
Yeah, it was a long time ago, but it was a European cow they found. So it does happen in a lot of parts of the world. But again, how many people actually come forward? Because if they see what happened to the cow and they know anything about this, a lot of people might not want to come forward just because they don't want to deal with whatever the stigma comes along with, being involved with cow mutilation or ufology or UFOs or whatever that is. Going back to this story with Mirage Men, though. I don't know how much we can believe Dottie on this. I don't know how much we can believe in this story, but where are we if all this turns out to be true? I mean, what's the next step now? Because this means that a lot of what we believe to be true is, it's BS. So where does that leave us?
Well, when it comes to a lot of this information, so for instance, the Aquarius document, this teletype, was the first document that Doty had given to Benowitz. He said he had faked this. He created this in 1980. William Moore said, he was given it to give to Benowitz. So this is a piece of disinformation he had passed along. He knew that it wasn't true. It was then given to Benowitz. And that document, we know, was made around 1980. It talks about Project Aquarius, MJ-12. At the time, this document said MJ-12 was working for NASA, and NASA was holding all the information. All of this stuff is morphed over time if you look at these documents as they tried to get it better and better. But the problem is we know that document came out in 1980. This is the first year, or it was created in 1980. This is the first year that Doty was working for Air Force OSI. So this guy, in his first year working for OSI, is being told the biggest secrets that the government has, and then he goes and he shares it with the ufologist. That makes zero sense. I mean, and that's the history of MJ-12. That is where it was first shared with someone in the public, and so that really sheds a lot of doubt. And this isn't Doty's word. We've got then Benowitz, who had the document. You have Moore. Plus, it's documented in a couple books. This document, prior to the Shandera Eisenhower document, which everybody thinks is the first document that came out. So it's got a solid history, some of this. So it's not just Doty's word we're relying on, because certainly you can't trust just his word.
Yeah, you really can. So, I mean, where will we be left off if it turns out to be true, though? Let's just say it is true. I mean, what does that mean for the overall picture?
Well, the overall picture is that, not everybody in the UFO field knows about newbies aren't as into MJ-12 and some of these other things, so it doesn't affect them as much. But for the rest of us, I mean, it just comes down to you got to do your research, and unfortunately, the old dogs in they brush this whole affair under the table because it's uncomfortable. But they've kind of left everybody out to hang. Robert Hastings writes about this a lot. He wrote about not too long ago in the Upstate it called Bird Droppings, talking about this whole event in the aviary and all of this. So he's been trying to get the word out in it for years about the origins of all this stuff, and a couple others have, but others have kind of brushed this under the table. And it's people we've got to be honest about the origins. It's fun to believe in this stuff, and that's why the I want to believe Mulder's poster is so perfect for a lot of this field, because a lot of people want to believe so bad that they don't want to look at, the evidence.
Facts, right. I mean, what does that say about us as human beings, though? That we just, we're easy to lead into any kind of nonsense like this? Really?
Well, how many, and I'm an agnostic, so to me, I look at it and say, how many people
believe religion?
A religion? Tons of people believe in a religion. Some of them, at least, Christianity, Judaism, things like that. They go back thousands of years. They're still pretty wild, pretty crazy, supernatural stuff. But then you look at some of these newer religions, Mormonism.
That's some wild stuff there.
So it's all pretty wild, and so. Yeah. And I'm sorry if you're a religious person, you really have no place to criticize people who believe in other wild things, because you yourself are basing a lot of this stuff off of faith. So it's just something that humans seem to do. And I wish, we would all replace our I want to believe posters with I want to know posters. And just because you've seen a UFO and UFOs
I'm
are
getting
real.
out the Photoshop now, and you send me the right.
That would be awesome.
You send me the right UFO picture. You know something? You send me the right UFO picture. I will happily. I got a printer that can do it. I like that idea.
Really?
I want to maybe put in a cool disclosure, the Real Disclosure Project.
See,
logo or something.
Alan over here is already looking for a way to profit off of this.
Oh no! It's just no.
I'm sure it's already been done.
Probably.
I just want the knowledge out there, and I want to fund this radio show that we got here, and make sure we have a good quality show each and every week.
Yeah.
Oh, we're doing that anyway. But good thinking there, Alan. Good job, Jason. How'd you get involved with Open Minds, man? Quick segue. How'd you get involved with Open Minds?
Well, it kind of fell on my lap. I helped form the company. I was working with another company, and my boss came up to me and said, I like UFOs. I want to start a magazine, have all these ideas. And my eyes lit up, and I said, oh, tell me more. And so, it just sounded fantastic. So, we started pushing things in the right direction and eventually made the company a reality. But, it for lack of a better way to describe it, it fell in my lap.
Right place, right time. The reason I ask is, your life, I'm sure, has changed since you've been involved with ufology, right? Drastically changed, at least in the perception of what people see when they see you. And that goes, I think, across the board for everybody kind of involved in this field. But it doesn't, when you have certain issues like this Miragement stuff, doesn't that kind of really take away from the legitimate issues that we have to deal with within ufology? And is it worse now because of stuff like this for people like yourself, like myself, like Alejandro over here, like Alan, to do these kind of shows? Do you think this puts like another negative stigma on ufology?
Well, it probably does, but when it's a sad state of affairs. If you've been in this field and there are various levels of being in this field, but if you've been somewhat active in the field and been researching in the field for a couple of years, unfortunately, this kind of stuff you get used to and maybe a little numb to. You kind of expect it.
It's kind of sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look, in the last few months, we've had this come out now, and of course, everybody has talked about Stan Romanek and what's going on with that whole mess over there. It just doesn't seem that there's either any credible people coming forward anymore, or there doesn't seem to be anything as substantial as the Roswell incident, for example. And now we have to look at everything with a real suspect eye, doesn't it? I mean, even videos on YouTube we can't take serious because hoaxing again is so widespread. Why do you think people do this kind of these hoaxing? I mean, like you said, if there's nobody that was paying Dottie or was paying for these documents to be made, why did they do it? I mean, that always bugs the heck out of me.
Well, everybody's different. I mean, humans are weird creatures, and everybody has different motives. I think for a lot of people who do that, it comes down to attention, seeking attention. But I don't know if this is any different than a lot of other fields. And something that's fascinating about the UFO field as a whole is this. It seems like a desire to feel defensive about everything. Like we need to protect ufology, and we've got to watch out because that person's making us look bad. And in doing so, I think that reaction in itself makes ufology look bad because it makes it look cliquey, like this small group of friends hanging out in a UFO club, and don't talk bad about us. I think it's much bigger than that. I mean, it's not this small, closed-in group of curious people. It is what it is. People want to know answers. People will research this stuff. And you're always going to have people out there who say stupid things, people who lie about things. But maybe some bigger things, like with Doty and Benowitz, things that people have latched onto so strongly, if those things get shaken a bit, and with all of the hoaxed UFO videos, maybe positive will come out of that and force people to be more skeptical. Being skeptical is not a bad thing. People need to really examine evidence and take a more scientific perspective in doing this. We can weed through all the crap because there is really exciting stuff out there to find and deserves to be researched when all this other garbage gets in the way.
I completely agree. What do you guys make of the image of Mars with the light illuminating in the background?
Yeah, the light source that's on the JPL photos.
You know what?
Alejandro just wrote about that today.
Yep.
Yeah, so I've got to, because I caught, I think, a little bit of your conversation on that. And I'm sorry, Alan, but, I think that, you're bringing up some good points in that there were two cameras. And it was caught on one camera and not the other. There are examples of the same phenomena happening where it's caught on one camera and not the other. To stereo cameras, so they're taken at the same time. So if there is something that
I didn't have
seen,
an answer to that. I didn't know the answer to that.
Now
and the reason they do that, because what if there was something for real flying across the screen? If they both get an image of that thing, they can tell the distance of how far it is away, and that's the purpose between the stereo thing. So to me, that all leads to some sort of anomaly. They're suspecting that perhaps there's a break in the case. That's what the rover team is saying, and that's happened before where there's a light leak. When the light hits the camera right at the right angle. It's funny because
but right directly on the surface. I mean, I'm sorry.
When the angle of the sun is on the camera in the right place. And funny enough, this happens on my garage door opener at the right time of year when the sun is hitting my little laser thing across the bottom. My garage door won't go down because it trips the laser thing. So I have to stand and create a shadow over the laser so that my garage door will go down. So it's that kind of thing. The light has to hit it at the right intensity, at the right angle. The other thing is a cosmic ray. Cosmic rays happen in space. If a cosmic ray hits the CCD, that's what most scientists are going with.
Yeah, I might give you the cosmic ray thing, but my objection to the cosmic ray is it is at a 90-degree angle from the surface of where it's coming from or going to. So I find that really, really statistically odd that a cosmic ray is coming straight down, not from any other angle. And if it's, it just doesn't seem...
Well, I think that you are maybe not looking at the full picture and you're looking at cropped pictures. Because, for instance, the picture that we have on our front page, I cropped. So I put the anomaly in the very center of the picture.
Oh, I haven't even seen that picture.
Click on the story and you see the full image, it's actually in the upper left-hand corner of the image, which, funny enough...
but I'm saying it is literally a 90-degree angle perpendicular to
Well, we don't know that, though, actually. That statement I don't agree with because... we don't know that it would be at a 90-degree angle. So, for instance, if you cut away anything, it's going to have a certain shape to it. This looks like something that could have swept and been going at a different angle than a 90-degree. I don't think we can tell from that image that it's a 90-degree angle.
But it is fascinating that most scientists are saying one thing and the rover team is saying something different.
That is interesting.
True. I also threw out the question over there, do they have microphones on the rover as well, too? I'm just wondering.
I don't believe in all of the equipment I've seen on Curiosity. I don't think it is equipped with microphones, but I could be wrong.
Okay,
they have some sort of microphone.
Why would we not? Why in God, if you believe in them, why in God's name would we not put... We've got every other sensor on the thing. Why would we not put a microphone?
Well, I think even more mysterious is there isn't... one of the things I was talking with... The rover can't detect life. It doesn't have a microscope that's capable of looking at that level to look at a microbe. So all it can do is look for chemicals... Right. Different chemical combinations that would indicate possible life. But if it found like this little gooey thing that it thought could be alive, it doesn't have a microscope capable of looking to see if there are little bacteria swimming around in there and stuff. I think they should have one of those.
Yeah, I agree. So how many billions are they going to spend before we can get that up there? That's the question.
Yeah, I know, and it would take years now.
Oh, we're going to have it up there soon. And,
wait a minute, hang on. I got to ask the question. With all the stuff we have access to, have we actually truly looked at the specs and how the rover was built? Are we sure that it's not on there? Is it possible, just by some chance, that there are some sensors and equipment on there that we're not aware of?
Well, the people I've talked to are scientists who are familiar with the project, or have even worked for NASA. I've talked to a few scientists. You're kind of indicating some sort of secret equipment on there that is unreleased to the public or something like that.
No, I'm just saying, how hard is it to get a microscope that, is it possible there is a microscope on there and they not
according to the scientists and the astrobiologists I've talked to.
Who was the brilliant person that decided not to put it on?
Well, they felt they didn't have room and they opted to put on all this other equipment that would be able to get them to figure out if there are right chemical combinations and things like that.
It's a pretty complex piece of machinery.
Yeah. So that's what
But how do we even know that what they're telling us is true about that, though? I mean, they could have snuck it in there and just told us, well, we didn't put that in there, so people don't ask that question.
Well, that means you would have to have lied to all of the scientific community internationally, but...
Yeah, and I know that's never happened before, really. Sorry, but no, we've never been lied to before. Even the scientific community has never been lied to before.
Well, private companies will be on Mars soon enough.
That's very true. That's very true. In fact, isn't there supposed to be a plan, or there's an article that came out a while back where they were signing people up to go live on Mars, and they had hit 200,000 signatures, people signing up?
Well, Mars One is still underway. They still plan to do that. They've gone through their astronaut selection process. So that's still, I don't think it's quite on track with the timetable they laid out, but it's still happening relatively soon, and they are partnered with SpaceX to be the technology to get them to Mars. So all the technology exists, and they plan to make it happen. It's all a matter of getting their money, and that's still questionable because they're still not fully disclosing how much money they have and how much money they need to raise. But I think they're going to do it.
And it's a one-way trip, right? That's what they're saying.
Yes, that is correct.
Ooh,
well, I'll happily, go for my real estate license to sell real estate on Mars.
There's a lot of land up
illegal. That's actually illegal. You cannot do that.
Really? Why is it illegal? I thought the moon was illegal to sell real estate on, but I didn't know about Mars. Who claimed that one?
Nobody's claimed anything. It's the International Space Treaty. It's the only governing document right now for space law, and it prohibits the ownership of property on any celestial body.
However, if you got on the craft, if you got part of Mars One, and maybe somebody's thinking of doing this, once you get to Mars, you can do whatever the hell you want.
That's right. Who's going to enforce it?
Yeah,
it
can
comes
start
down
your
to
own
the question
government.
of enforcing. There's nobody to enforce these laws, so it's going to be the Wild West. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's it going to be like? The government of 5 people? Because how many people are going to really
There'll
be
be 5
in your
people.
government?
It could be like, I am King Jackal, the first king of the Mars colony, and
there you go.
all are now my subjects. And,
You're
and
all
that's
my
the
children.
first person who doesn't like it, you shove out of the
That's right.
space.
That's
We're
right.
gonna
You can
space
do whatever
We're
you
gonna
want.
send you out- We're
Yeah.
shooting you out the airlock. Hey, speaking
Old
of that,
school.
has anybody seen this new TV show, The 100?
No.
No.
That's aired on. Oh, it's just started to air on the CW network. About a couple of 100 years after the Earth had a apocalyptic crisis of nuclear devastation.
Oh,
all
that
the
old
space
story.
stations. No, check this out. All the space stations interlocked into each other, and only humanity survived up in space, combining their efforts of all the space stations together to create a community. And they're now, the plot line is that they sent their delinquents back down to all the offspring and the delinquents from up there down to check out if it's okay to live on Earth or not. It's not a bad premise. I don't know if anybody has any
Didn't
thoughts
Matt
on-
Damon do a movie similar to Elysium or something like that? It's called.
No, Elysium. He was leaving to go up to the Dyson sphere or the Dyson.
Right, but isn't that the same
Ring-
premise?
Well, that
Not
was
really.
not an apocalypse. It was kind of maybe an economic kind of apocalypse.
Yeah, that was an
Whereas
economic breakdown. Yeah,
somehow every America becomes like Mexico. That part I didn't get. I
really, I
liked
thought
the
it
movie.
was looking more like.
And then all the
India.
rich people go up on a space station. So
Yeah,
that
this-
part I do get. That's cool.
Oh, by the way, can I just jump back to the Dulce, New Mexico thing for a second? Got a question. What do you think about the supposed bases that are under, like the Denver airport and things like that? Does that possibly exist, or is that also disinfo?
I don't think that's
yeah.
disinfo. I think it's crazy rantings from a bunch of goofballs, which this field is unfortunately fraught with.
Full
I
of,
mean,
yeah.
I lived in Denver. I used to fly in and out. I was a corporate trainer of that all of the time. The art pieces, for example, they were done by this, Mexican American artist. He has the whole logic behind what he was going for when he did it, and it's an evolution from kind of a fascism to living and being peaceful with nature. And that's what the artwork does. So people are focusing on these parts of like these fascist militaristic type of stuff, but there's more to the painting to that. And, that was part of his image when he did this. There is, for every little alleged piece of goofiness, there are very clear answers for. And funny enough, they're building this new train station at the airport that goes to downtown Denver for a light rail system. And it's real fancy and cool looking. I was just there for Christmas. It's really cool. But for the inauguration or for a halfway celebration, a halfway point celebration, it was all centered around aliens and UFOs and their alien base under the DIA. So their whole marketing was kind of making fun of all of this and everything. They even had the mayor calling like the ex-mayor, and they staged this phone call of, "Oh, hey, people found out about our base," and then they had this guy in an alien outfit on the phone, and it was pretty funny. So
Sounds like the Ronald
Yeah,
McDonald
but-
Taco Bell commercial.
But it's, I lived in Denver. I looked into all of these things. The best story was done by a local paper, Westward. It's called. It's the Village Voice paper of Denver, and they did a really long story where they did a great research into it. That's one of the best pieces when it comes to that. But yeah, unfortunately, there's fortunately, because some of the stories are pretty scary, but there's nothing to see there.
All right, because I remember going through the place and I've seen the murals and all, but all these stories about multiple levels and the goof-ups supposedly in construction where they actually built out buildings further out on the property that they've covered up, but they're actually still there and there might be tunnels to and from them and all sorts of other stuff. I'm like,
well, here's the thing though, Alan. Would it shock you that they have underground bases or underground tunnels within airports that deal with the airport itself? It has nothing to do with government or conspiracy or anything. Look, Walt Disney World in Florida has underground cities.
Oh, yeah, well,
so,
true.
I mean, in California, they have them also for Disney. And that's just Disney theme parks. And they're, they have their own underground system. So I wouldn't be shocked if the airport does have something, further underground that deals just with airport activity and stuff that goes on in the airport. Doesn't always have to be some sinister government plot.
Well, and the lore is so big surrounding DIA that the local media there, periodically when they're looking for revisiting that story, they'll go and cover that story again, and they'll take reporters down under the airport and tour around the underground facilities. So they show it on TV all the time.
Yeah, it's not like it's a dirty secret that they're trying to hide from the public.
Okay, I'm just asking, folks.
No, that's sure great.
I want to strap every single ufologist onto a lie detector and see. I really, really do, because some of the stories that come out of these people, I'm like, I just want to strap them down and just ask one question: are you telling the truth or not?
What are your sources? I mean, that's the hard part. What are the sources? So many people, the sources just suck. Well, I read it on the internet. This is one of the one things, and okay, now I feel bad for saying something negative about Steve Bassett, but it's one of the things that frustrate me. And even when we did a panel at the conference, I asked him this, and I always ask him, well, what are your sources? Because there are great sources out there. I mean, when you go to a congressman and you're going to say this is a real deal, this stuff's really going on, where are you going to point them to? He says the internet. It's all there on the internet. That's awful.
Well,
the congressman's going to go look at the internet and say this is ridiculous. I was expecting him, to say the Rockefeller document, even some paper that's been done, or go look at the Rendlesham Forest, or some of these great, great cases or something like that. But it all comes down to sources, and that's really, really important. And no one can really point to the sources when it comes to the DIA. I think it was some guy who, just with a lot of imagination, who was walking through the airport and was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, and writes all this stuff. So if there's a secret base, underground secret base, which would make sense, there would be, but it's not under DIA. I don't think it's under Dulce. I have no idea where it would be, and I think that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Look, we're about to take a break in a minute here, but I do want to lead off with a question that I want you guys to talk about when we come back. Is a story that you read also on the last show you guys did, the Bill Clinton stuff that happened this past week, which was really funny. He was, of course, on TV, and he talked about Area 51. We have a caller on the line who wants to ask our guests, Jason and Alejandro, a question here. Dan, you're on the line on Skywatchers Radio. Ask away, my friend. Welcome to the show.
Good evening, gentlemen. When you brought up the issue of underground bases, there are two things that are very interesting that everybody tends to ignore. Is what do they do with all the dirt?
No, I think you make a really good question there. Some people say, like, there are some suspicions that there are some remote places, like in Colorado and stuff like that, where, in the mountainous areas, they're so remote that I could see you being able to drive trucks out there and drive trucks out with people not really knowing where they were going. So, but you'd have to drive big distances.
Well, the problem with that, though, is the amount of dirt that you would have to move is going to draw an awful lot of attention just because of the number of trucks you have to move.
But if you're in a really rural place,
that's even more remote. Because anybody goes, what the hell are all these trucks doing out here?
Well, if there's no one to see them.
Yeah, there's always somebody to see.
If it's remote enough, they could spread it all over the ground, and you're not going to notice it.
Yeah.
The same way you have a salt spreader when it comes to snow, you have a spreader for the dirt that's in there as well, too.
Massive excavating operation.
And look, there's construction going on all over the place. I'm pretty sure they could get rid of the dirt.
Now, here's another idea. Everybody, they've been talking about, for example, the high-speed underground railroad between the various bases. If you had any indication of where the routes might be, you could put seismometers along on the surface and detect any strange anomalous activity at, let's say, 150, 200 feet below surface.
Yeah,
that's an interesting thought. Yeah, that's actually interesting. I'd be curious to look at the USGS. They have those earthquake maps that are running all the time and constantly showing things. I'd be curious to actually see if there's. I think he's got a point there. I'd be curious to run that as a database to see what shows up.
Okay, well, that's basically what I had to say. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you for the call, Dan. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'll call back in another day.
Thank you, buddy.
Okay, bye-bye.
And I look forward to that email, by the way, that you sent. Anyway, gentlemen, interesting question, though. What do you guys think of the question Dan posed there?
Well, I'm sure that many people out there have offered answers before, speculated about this. And I think I've even heard something about potential alien technology that played a role into it as well, sort of somehow fusing the dirt and making it go away or something. But it's all speculation. I have no idea.
Aren't you talking about that NASA tunnel boring machine, that nuclear tunnel borer that actually takes the dirt, turns it into glass, and pushes it out to the side?
Yes.
There you go.
Okay, I don't think it's alien tech. I think it's our own tech that does that.
Well, we don't know that for sure, Alan.
You're right. We don't. We don't know.
We don't know anything at this
I
point.
Think they might have gotten the idea.
Things that we thought we knew, we're finding out that we really didn't know anything, and we've been lied to.
Or maybe we haven't.
You're right.
Or maybe we haven't. Exactly. And that's another question here.
Maybe we have.
Let's just say that all this stuff with Dottie is, he's making everything up, and everything was actually fact.
Well, the problem with that is, and how would he know these secrets? Especially given his background. I mean, I got a FOIA request for officially what his background is and when he was working where, so we know that information.
So you think he's now telling the truth and he's honestly
well, he was really working for the Air Force. That's in several government or several Air Force documents that I have. His military records and also the Benowitz, the official Benowitz files that I was able to get from the Air Force. So those are things that we know for sure. That's why if everything else he is saying is a lie, that means he was spreading lies for years while he was working for the Air Force. And they need to answer for that. Why were they allowing this to happen? And if they didn't know he was doing it, how did they not know that this guy is spreading alleged hoax documents? I mean, how can an OSI
How could that go undetected under their nose?
Exactly. And if it did, they needed to make an apology. I mean, they need to make an apology to Benowitz's family, and they need to say, we screwed up. This guy was doing this. He was committing crimes the whole time. He's supposed to be an agent for special investigations, which deals with crime. So he's essentially supposed to be working in a law enforcement capacity while he's committing crimes.
It's a crazy story. I'm going to check out the Mirage Men movie in the next few days. Now, you can view it on your website. I know you guys talked about it on the
go to the website, and on the right-hand side, you can scroll down and you'll see a little image there. It's a pretty big image of Doty's face, and Mirage Men. You just click on that, and you'll be able to watch it. They're charged $7.50, I think, to watch it. And now, then you can also find out information.
If you purchase it, can you multiple times? Can you watch it multiple times, or is it like a one-time thing and you got to pay another $7?
Well, I don't know, to be honest. I think you have a period of time because I didn't. It's this other company that did it, and they asked us if we'd be interested in putting it on our site, and we said sure. But I think maybe it is. You're allowed to see it for a certain amount of time.
Like a rental.
That. Yeah. So,
Gotcha.
but you can buy the DVD also. That's going to be coming out in a couple months.
Oh, cool.
So you can pre-order that as well.
I'm definitely checking that out. Now, before we went to break, I left off with a question that I wanted to get to, and really not a question, but a story that came out this past couple of weeks with former President Bill Clinton. Bubba has been in the news, and he talked about Area 51, and it was funny to listen to Clinton talk about Area 51, and then being asked if he looked into the alien phenomenon and to UFOs and stuff, and he was pretty candid about what he did and what he looked into, and he said that they found nothing, but in tongue-in-cheek. Do you think, Clinton knows and was told some stuff that might be real and knows more than he let on? Because that was a really interesting conversation that he had. And, again, it was funny because he did quote Ronald Reagan in that very famous speech in the 80s. What do you guys think? I know I already heard it on the show, but for the audience who hasn't, heard your take on the whole thing, give us your take, and each one of you.
Okay. I guess I'll go first, just in that, that's what's funny. Kimmel asked him, he said, if I was, going to be president, I'd run to the White House and tell them to tell me all about UFOs. That's the first thing I'd do. And he said, did you do that? And Clinton said, sort of, when actually it was more than sort of. Clinton did do that. He goes on to say he didn't do it until his second term, but he did do that. He, has a quote that was in a book by a guy named William Hubble, who was a friend of his. He told him, he went to the Justice Department. He said, I want you to find out about UFOs and who killed JFK. Hubble essentially said, I wasn't able to find out, So Clinton did ask about Roswell. We had the Air Force came out with Roswell responses during his administration, saying they were mogul and all of this other, silly stuff. Because regardless of what you think about Roswell, the responses so far have been pretty bad from the Air Force.
Well, the crash test dummies came out of that, didn't they?
Yeah, crash test dummies, because they did 2 during his administration.
Yeah.
But to your point, Clinton was he was candid, but he did say, I wouldn't be surprised. I think extraterrestrials are out there. He gave this whole speech about how they're probably here. The universe is so big. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do come and visit us. And so far I know of, and we put him on our website 3 different times where he's talked about UFOs and aliens. And every single time he seems to leave it open to, he thinks UFOs are real or is open to the idea. I mean, there he says, I wouldn't be surprised if UFOs come. I just hope it's not like Independence Day. Another time that's a little more is also well known. This was like in Germany where he's talking to a crowd, and he says, little Timmy, he's reading a letter. Little Timmy asked me if I know anything about Roswell and if there are aliens there, and he says, I don't know. If there is, the Air Force hasn't told me, and I'd sure like to know. Again, saying he wants to know about this stuff. And then in 2005 in Hong Kong, there's a Hong Kong UFO researcher who was able to record this, or at least get this out. And they asked him about, UFOs and aliens in Area 51. And he said, well, I did investigate a base in Nevada. The Air Force has told me there's nothing to any of these stories. But he says, I wouldn't be the first time or the first president. I think I've got it right here. Essentially, he said he wouldn't be the first president that staffers would have lied to. So again, he leaves it open that they told me there's nothing there, but maybe there is. They could have been lying to me. So every time he leaves it open. So he's definitely, I think, a UFO buff.
Yes.
So which is pretty cool. But interesting enough, too, just on the Area 51 real quick, Area 51 really came to be known during his administration, too. And even officially, Area 51 employees were suing because they were being made to burn chemicals and stuff like that, and they were dying, and it was really sad. So they sued, and the Air Force kind of went to Clinton and said, hey, this is too secret. We can't tell you what we're doing and why. So Clinton, put in this decision. Essentially, it's called where it's an executive kind of order type of thing where they have to renew it every year to keep Area 51 and what they do their secret, which unfortunately resulted in these people's lawsuit being thrown out, so they got no compensation for all of their sickness. But he never had said the word Area 51, even in this documentation. It's always the facility near Groom Lake is how they refer to it.
Right.
So this is the first time I think that he has actually said in public the term Area 51, but he's not the first president to do it, because just a few weeks ago, Obama trumped him, and Obama said
it, yeah.
Yeah, with an awards ceremony that Shirley MacLaine was there, and he said, Shirley MacLaine's the one I call when I have questions about Area 51. And everybody laughed, and he even said, I think I'm the first president to mention Area 51, which he is, because up until recently it was officially classified.
Right. Classified, but again, it doesn't mean there's aliens, and Clinton was very adamant that there's nothing there alien-wise.
Right.
But again, do you think that Bill Clinton would be the kind of president that they would tell if you actually asked him? I mean, they were trying to impeach the guy.
I think he's being honest that he really
wasn't told, yeah.
He wasn't told, and he's even skeptical.
I think
himself
because he's only in for a short amount of time.
Yeah, these politicians, you're right. They're only in for a short amount of time. He even said that, I wouldn't be the one, first president that career bureaucrats have lied to. That's what he said.
Right.
Exactly. There are career bureaucrats.
Right.
There are career military that are there for the rest of their lives.
Right.
And you're just, to the president, you're just here short term, man. You're going to be gone in either 4 or 8 years. You don't need to know this.
Yeah, I don't think he's satisfied that he's received all the answers.
Yeah. Do you think there's any presidents that have actually been told, really been told in the last, 40 years?
Crickets.
Exactly. None.
That's a tough question. It's a tough question these days, because I think Clinton went to go find out, and he couldn't. He's the only president I know of who probably did that. Maybe Nixon did. Him and Gleason were friends, and Gleason was into UFOs, so that's possible. But
and Carter said he did, but who knows how much he really pushed the issue.
Right.
Reagan, said he was into UFOs. He talked about this stuff, like you said. Clinton was talking Reagan-esque type of stuff, and
right.
So it's hard to say, but you know what? The more I get into this, the more I research, the less I know. I think that a lot of old-time researchers. Now I understand what they mean when they say that. So who knows what anybody knows to even tell them? Who would tell them what? That's the hard question. So is there something that someone knows to tell them? Maybe somewhere. Maybe there was. Maybe there isn't anymore. So who knows? But whatever it is, he certainly doesn't feel like he was given answers. And
no.
If anybody, of course, had any, it would be
the Bush family.
Bush Senior, maybe not Junior, because he's a goofball. But
well, yeah, but you're gonna tell me that Daddy's on to tell his son, what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Daddy told his son very much. I think Daddy bossed his son around and told him, "Here's what you do. You do this. You do that."
If you know you've got a goofball son who can barely tie his shoes, you're not going to tell him information like that, where he's going to go around and blab to people about it.
That's true. I'm still trying to get over this speech where he said that humans and fish need to learn to coexist together.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know of that one.
You haven't? You've never heard that speech?
Yeah,
I will send it to you.
Oh, that would be great.
It is hilarious. It's Bushisms on YouTube. It is a very funny speech. Yeah, he actually says that human beings and fish need to learn how to live and coexist together in peace.
The fish people of...
I think he might have meant dolphins or whales.
Oh, by the way, Jason knows
I'm hoping
how to say that moon of the moon of Saturn. Jason
yes, because I was butchering that earlier. Thank you for bringing that up. It slipped my mind. He told me during the break, and I've already forgotten. So, Jason, I'm gonna let you school me on air because I did butcher that name really badly, and I'm okay when somebody corrected me. So, please, how do you pronounce the name of the moon?
Well, this bothered me so much because I got made fun of a lot because I had no idea how to say it, because I'd written about it so much And writing something and saying it are completely different things. So I actually had to talk to some scientists to find out how to say it. So don't feel bad. But it's pronounced Enceladus.
Enceladus.
Yeah.
Enceladus. So that's who Bush was talking about. The fish people of Enceladus.
Exactly.
I was like, Includus? I had no idea. I was way off. Enceladus. That's a cool name, though. Enceladus. Reminds me of Elysium.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what do you guys think of that story?
I wonder who named it. Can we sell real estate there? Can I sell real estate there?
No, you can't sell real estate, Alan.
Always thinking of way to make
over it.
There's no
Look, just
always
give it a few years. Give it a few years, and you'll be able to do it. Because the problem with space law is that it hasn't been revisited since like the 60s, when the treaty was drawn up. And back then, space was thought of as this faraway thing that we're never going to get to anyway, so we don't really need to take this seriously and worry about all these complicated issues that'll come up. So there's so many things that now that space is a reality and becoming even more so every day, they're going to have to sit down and rework a treaty, come up with something new, basically scrap the old one, come up with something new that's more realistic. And Robert Bigelow, Bigelow Aerospace, is actually pushing this issue right now because he wants to. Well, and he's got plans with NASA to put a base on the moon. So the issue for him that he's trying to push is: look, a private company like mine and all these other private space companies, we need to make money. And by not allowing us to own property on something like the moon, that takes away our incentive to do it. We need to have a monetary incentive. So if we're not able to make money, why are we going to invest our billions of dollars into putting something up there that we don't get to own anyway?
Yeah, well, his other point, which is great, and this is why he said we need to figure this out right now, is if I build a base that we're going to put on the moon, where am I going to put it? I have to put it on some land, and I've got to know the rights to the land that I may have.
Well, and he also
go to for those rights?
There's no answer to that question. And his other point is that, if we don't figure this out, China goes up there and establishes a base and just says we're doing this. Who's going to stop them? There is there's no enforcement. There are no rules. That's why I said the Wild West.
Shouldn't the United Nations get involved and actually, talk about this and make this an agenda where they could?
Well, they really need to because people have liked to ignore it because again, it seemed like this lofty, faraway sci-fi type thing that we don't really need to address because it's not going to happen. Right. Well, newsflash, it's happening now.
Well, here's the other problem. Is that the UN does have space rules, and the U.S. walks all over them. So the U.S. has been putting weapons in space and all of these other things, and we've been just walking all over them.
Well, and that's the problem. I mean, you've got no enforcement, you've got no rules, you've got these treaties that some nations have signed on to, but not everybody has. So again, I mean, it's just chaos waiting to happen.
Yeah, it's the Wild West all over again.
But I do think Enceladus is very exciting from an astrobiological perspective, as are many moons in the solar system. I mean, I get excited about all these potentially habitable worlds that we hear about outside of our solar system. But our solar system is incredibly exciting on its own. I mean, I think there's tons of life right here. So.
Yep. That's what I was saying earlier. I think we're going to find out when we start really looking deep into some of these planets and moons and stuff in our very own solar system. We're going to find life, all kinds of life. And I was even saying animal-like life like we see here on Earth. Maybe even Alan and I was talking about earlier, maybe humanoid life. You never know. Carbon-based, silicone-based life. There's all kinds of different, thinking outside the box there, but there's all kinds of different forms of life that could exist. But I think, looking at the moon, especially the moons of Saturn, is a very interesting idea because doesn't the planet itself radiate heat, which would allow the moon to have some sort of life possibly on it?
Well, there are a lot of things that come into play with these moons that, although they don't fall into the traditional habitable zone, they do have elements that strongly suggest that life can exist there. And you're exactly right. There are places for life as we know it, and life like us, but there are also many strong indications that places other moons might have like methane-based life or other forms, because there's so many different forms of liquid out there, not just liquid water.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. Liquid methane.
Yep.
It's like we said, this could be life in any form out there. It's funny because a lot of people think, oh well, life has to be exactly like the way it is on Earth, and that's really like a pigeonhole that a lot of even scientists fall into. Sadly enough, now they're opening up more of the possibilities of different kind of lives. But even, for example, the SETI program, they look for signals that are similar to what we would put out there. You know what I mean? And that's not thinking outside the box. What do you guys think of SETI, for example? I mean, they haven't really, caught anything.
Well, I think you're right. And if you look at the documents, even at their inception, they got criticism for, well, it's a valid effort. It's a worthwhile thing to do, but we shouldn't use radio waves because we're already moving off of radio waves. So even back then, they were looking for other options. And now we have a scientist who got a grant to start looking for laser communications. He says he's even looking for a laser internet that might be out there, some laser-based internet, space internet that you could tap into. That'd be cool.
That would be very fast, huh? Very cool.
Yeah, so I mean, talking about SETI and talking about scientists focusing on life as we know it, not looking for other types of life, I like to get frustrated with that because I want them looking for everything, because I'm convinced there are an infinite variety of life out there. But, you can't look for everything. We only know what we know. So I understand why scientists focus their search on life as we know it, because what else are they going to look for? They don't know to look for particular signs of some unknown life form. And SETI, if they're not going to do it, then we're just crossing one thing off the list. I mean, I guess it's good. If they want to do it, they're doing it. That's good. I think targeting as many ways as we can, I mean, that increases our possibility of finding life. So,
how long has SETI been in business now? For how long? Because I know they've been around for at least a few decades now.
I forget when Frank Drake started it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I'm going to guess the 80s. I guess I could check out...
At least 30 years.
Wikipedia here.
The internet, our best friend.
I think it was the 70s. But.
At least, yeah. It has to be at least 3 decades, maybe 4 decades. And they really... And I know that, the signal that would mean something, they call it the WOW signal, right? That's
right.
That's the name for it. But they haven't really had any WOW signals in 30, 40 years. So, it might be time for them to start thinking a little bit outside the box, a little bit more outside the box. Do you think the SETI will ever really catch anything? Honestly?
It's always possible, especially if they adapt and stop relying just on radio signals. But that's the thing. I mean, SETI does a lot more. They're very active in astrobiology, and the SETI scientists are actually contributing to other efforts, like sifting through the data collected by Kepler Space Telescope. So they've been integral in making some of the planet discoveries.
That's interesting.
Yeah. 1971 was when they started with SETI. Oh, interesting, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a WOW signal yet.
Yep.
But it is what it is. SETI is a good program, though, so we definitely should keep supporting SETI. Now, have you guys ever ran the SETI at home?
No, never done that.
Never done that?
I'm using all of the computer processing power.
Ditto.
Yeah, I need all.
I don't want anything bogging my machine down.
It's funny because I actually ran that on my old computer for about a month, and it really does slow your computer down immensely. Wow. Yeah, it really. Well, it was an older computer, so it might have been the computer itself, but it is. It is
well, hell, since it's pure. Well, since it's cloud computing at its original first. I think is that the first original cloud computing shared distribution that's ever been out there? I'm just wondering.
It's probably one of the earliest.
But also, what I'd also say is, can you imagine if we got all the used and old computers that are sitting in people's closets or storage and collecting dust, and just let it run for SETI at home? Can you imagine how much power we would have to process all the data that's coming in?
Yeah, I mean, there's just an infinite pile of data that comes in, also collected by Kepler Space Telescope. I mean, it's going to take them years and years to get through all that data, and it's not collecting data anymore. So, but the scientist Alejandro mentioned, Jeff Marcy, is really exciting because he's a mainstream scientist, and yeah, he got 2 grants. One was to search for that laser-based alien internet, and the other was to search for alien spacecraft. It's the mainstream scientist, and these are 2 grants he got to actively do this. So it's really exciting.
That's really cool stuff. Speaking of aliens or spacecrafts, have you guys seen the Mona Lisa alien video that's been on the internet for the last few years?
I don't know.
Oh, the Apollo 20.
The Apollo 20 footage that shows.
Oh, yes.
The alleged Mona Lisa alien. We've talked about this on the show before, and it's an intriguing video, especially one of the shots you can see an astronaut's face flipping the camera around as it pans over to the supposed alien laying on the table. What do you guys think of that video? Have you guys seen it?
I personally think it's silly, and if I remember correctly, when I first looked into it like years ago, or when it came out, there was a source for it. It was some sort of Italian TV show or something like that put it together. So I can't remember the details, but I've always thought it was kind of silly personally.
I don't really have an opinion about it.
Well, I could tell you this. One thing I could definitely tell you about this. My girlfriend's father.
That's your girlfriend in the video?
No.
Thanks
for asking. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not into grannies. I'm not into aged and well-seasoned. I like them nice and young, in their 20s or so. But thanks for asking. But what I want to point out is my girlfriend, actually, her father used to work for NASA, and he said whoever did do this, they had to have filmed it in a LEM module, because he verified for me, and I could get him on the show in the next couple of weeks if you want. He verified for me that whoever filmed it, the video had to have been taken in a LEM module, because there's no way they could replicate every single nook, cranny, and button and switch that was shown on that video.
Why not?
Too time-consuming, and getting all the right colors from the right manufacturers and everything. I had this whole argument over a dinner with him. It's just virtually impossible to, literally frame out the sheet metal, to literally make it to spec would have taken a monumental effort.
Some people have a lot of free time.
Yes, that's true. Look at the guys who put together the alien autopsy video, Alan.
Okay,
exactly.
Yeah, I'm looking at it, and, half the stuff you could get at a prop shop in Hollywood. Getting a LEM module, not as easy. I have another friend who actually has made a replica for his web series of the original USS Enterprise from Star Trek. And I know what it took for him to put that together for his web series. And it was way, way expensive. A lot of time put into it, and a lot of people involved. People will talk. This Mona Lisa thing, I don't know if it's smoke and mirrors or not, but I'll tell you this. They had to, whoever did do it, this LEM module that they used to film it, had to have been pretty much real deal. But that's just my thought.
Oh, we're going to have to look more into that, I guess. We don't have a whole lot of time left in the show, but I want to ask you guys, what's coming up on Open Minds? What do you guys got cooking for the next couple of weeks?
Next couple of weeks, more of the same. I mean, Jason and I, we don't know what we're going to write about when we go into the office that day. We go search, and we like to have everything fresh and brand new. So we go search and find stuff. So I don't know what I'm writing about tomorrow or the next day. We'll go in and find something. But we do have, I have in the cooker, which is just funny that this Mirageman thing came out right now. We're working on all of this stuff that I've talked about with Doty. We're going to be releasing very soon here.
Oh, very cool.
So including documents that I had to get for through FOIA requests or through other research. I've been researching this literally for years, but really hardcore the last year or so. And so documents that I don't think others have ever seen. Most other people haven't ever seen before. I think even some of the seasoned researchers, and I know the Mirage Men guys hadn't seen some of this stuff.
Very cool. Got to keep our eyes on that. Jason, how's it working with Alejandro over here on a weekly basis? He's a good guy, huh?
You'll have to ask me that when I'm on without him.
Oh. But
No,
you guys
no.
realize
That's when the truth will come out.
Jason's on that Hangar One TV show.
Yeah, he is. Let's talk about that for a minute. How is that going? Because it's a great show. In fact, Alan over here is the first one who mentioned that show to me a while back. He's like, man, you got to see this show, Hangar One.
Yeah, it actually came out pretty well. People are liking it, and I haven't heard much about actual numbers, but I know at least the few episodes were beating Ancient Aliens, so that says something. But it does.
Oh, that's right. Are you guys on the same time slot?
Ancient Aliens leads into it, so it's the same channel as Ancient Aliens.
Yeah.
So Ancient Aliens, when their episode ends, then ours starts. So yeah, so it's an interesting show. They got some
reruns.
What's up?
I was saying they're in reruns. You're brand spanking new. Which reminds me, how many episodes are you planning on doing for a season?
We shot 8 episodes, 6 have aired, so 2 more are left.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Ancient Aliens, especially I think on our premiere episode, it was a new episode of Ancient Aliens. So it was a new episode of Ancient Aliens followed by a new episode of Hangar One. So that really helped us. But it's funny that the response, you know, a lot of people get fixated on small things. And I admit I was fixated on this small thing too. And that's the whole premise of the name Hangar One, because the show starts out and explains that MUFON has this hangar called Hangar One where they store all their files. I was like, this is kind of silly. They don't have a hangar called Hangar One. Nobody's going to believe that. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. They do actually have a hangar, and it's actually called Hangar One in Ohio, and that's where they keep their archives.
And it is a great name for a show, Hangar One.
Yeah, so they went with it.
That's very cool. Again, guys, the website is openminds.tv, and your show airs on PSN Radio. Of course, we play the podcast, but you guys also put it on YouTube as well, and it's all over the internet, really. Any other websites you want to give out before we go off the air?
No, openminds.tv is it, and our YouTube channel, youtube.com/openmindstv.
Yeah, and if you haven't been there, we put on literally the largest UFO conference every year in Phoenix. It's usually in late February, early March. So we haven't set the date solid, but keep an eye out for it, the UFO Congress, and you got to reserve rooms early because the main hotel sells out. And this year, the whole town was sold out. So the town we have outside of. Because it's in this little town just outside of Phoenix. You can stay in Phoenix. It's not that far from there. But if you want to be close, get in early. But you have to check that out. We always have, some really cool speakers.
Yeah, me and Alan have to fly out there next year and take
For
part.
Sure, yeah.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Looking forward to that, yeah.
Are you still doing any stuff with MUFON, Alejandro, or is that...
Yeah, we work pretty close with them, just because, I focus on promoting Open Minds and everything. But we work super close with them. In fact, we're contacting. I talked to Jan, the new director, on a regular basis. We interviewed him recently about Hangar One. That's how we found out about the hangar really existed. They've got us on their front page. We've got them on ours. And we're writing stories on them all the time. So yeah, we work really closely with MUFON.
That's cool, man. I thought that maybe you guys weren't working as closely with them, but MUFON is still very important.
Not at all.
The overall field. So everybody, please support MUFON. Guys, we're all out of time. Unfortunately, we have to have Alejandro and Jason back here very soon because you guys are awesome to talk to. Alejandro, you're one of my favorite people, man. Love having you on the show. And
Thanks,
Jason.
brother.
Just met you on the phone first time. I've known you on Facebook, and it's been an honor to have you on the show. And hopefully we'll have you back on real soon.
That'd be awesome. And, thanks for having us, and good to finally meet you.
Yeah, man. Keep up the great work. We love reading your articles.
Yeah, it was great talking with you guys. Absolutely.
Please keep writing the thousands of articles you guys write per year because we're going to keep reading them because they're awesome. They give us a lot of stuff to talk about. So for the crowd here, Open Minds people, thank you for listening into the show and listening to Alejandro and Jason, and for everybody on Dark Matter Radio Network, I want to thank you. I want to thank everybody on TalkStream Live. Also want to thank Keith Rowland, Nancy Burns, Bill Burns, and everybody who supports Skywatchers Radio. Guys, we're all out of time. Take care, everybody. Skywatchers out.
upset, rightfully so. He was sharing information with the Doty on ufologists and hoaxing information. There's no way to justify that. Even though he likes to try to do that, he won't give interviews anymore. But in the few that he has, he tries to justify it. And when he came out, he did. I personally don't see the justification. Neither did his colleagues in the UFO field. So he kind of bowed out. Stanton Friedman, I think because of the respect that people have for him, he hasn't been interviewed very much. I know that what's his name? One of the Roswell researchers, Randall. Randall. I can't remember his first name right now, but
not Jesse.
Kevin Randall. He,
okay.
A lot of when the Majestic 12 documents came out, funny enough, the researchers at the time thought they were ridiculous for the most part. 80% of them. Kevin Randall was there, and he always tells Friedman, well, why do you kind of gloss over the fact that Doty is the one who mentioned MJ-12 in a document he says he hoaxed? And he never got a response from Stanton. However, luckily, we have a good relationship with him, and I've known him for years, and I would consider him a friend. So last time he came to the office, we did interview him, and we're putting together a video where we've interviewed a lot of the players from that time, including Timothy Good, who, at least in a public forum, was the first to release the MJ.
I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Yeah, so we interviewed all of these guys, and Stanton admits, I asked him, well, how do you cope with that? And he says, I don't know. He really kind of doesn't have an answer, and he says he had kind of demanding that they respond, that they say something, because either Doty really was under orders, which of course is a big deal because the things that he did are illegal. You can't run a campaign like this against an American citizen. Or two, he was doing it all on his own, but he was using Air Force and Kirtland resources, such as he brought Linda Moulton Howe to the base to tell her, to show her some hoax documents and things like this. So the Air Force knew about it, or this guy did all of this, telling Benowitz lied during the course of this. He lied to some senators. So he did this while he was an OSI agent for the Air Force. So either way, I think the Air Force has to say something about it. And it would be great if kind of people jumped on the bandwagon to force them to do that, because it's a big deal. Not only that, people don't know the history. Everybody thinks Majestic 12 documents came out when this Shandera guy, who was partners with Moore during this time that Moore was secretly working with Doty, that's when the Majestic 12 documents came out. Not true. Majestic was part of this Doty thing from the beginning, and people don't know about that. So we're going to be writing a lot more about that also, but that's why this Mirage Men documentary is really important too.
No, it looks amazing. I'm going to actually check it out as soon as I have a chance. But has Stan Friedman said anything about this yet? Because, I mean, he's part of the story.
Yeah, that's interesting. Not many people have interviewed Stanton Friedman, because really this whole episode was a big embarrassment. When Bill Moore came out, it was a MUFON meeting and admitted to all of this. People got livid at Bill Moore. They wanted to forget he existed. They were really...
All right, everybody, welcome back to Skywatchers Radio right here on Dark Matter Radio Network and on PSN Radio. With us, like we said earlier, we have the cast of Open Minds Radio, Mr. Alejandro Rojas and Jason McClellan. Welcome, guys, to Skywatchers Radio.
Thank you very much.
Hello, hello. Good to be here.
Alejandro, it's always fun hearing your voice, my friend. How you guys been the last couple of weeks?
Good. Busy as usual, but good.
You know, I just heard the last episode you guys did. Of course, we have your show leading into Skywatchers on PSN, and the show you guys did with the Mirage Men. the guys who wrote the Mirage Men and put the film out. Great story. I want to start with that. I mean, a great interview, by the way, Alejandro. Really, really cool interview. Covering that story. What do you think of that story? Do you think that there's any validity to what they're saying in that film?
Well, I think, like I told them, I really feel that this is one of the most important stories in ufology because I think it's kind of the low-hanging fruit as far as if we're going to prove the Air Force did involve itself in disinformation, this would be the case, I think, where we could do it. And not only that, I think that if they did, then of course that has implications itself, why they would do that, that kind of thing. However, I'm not so sure. I don't know. I kind of, at this point, I guess just to give a background for people who didn't hear the show, Mirage Men is mostly interviews with this guy named Richard Doty, who worked for Air Force Office of Special Investigation in the 80s. During that period of time, right when he came on with Air Force OSI, he began to be part of a disinformation campaign with a guy named Benowitz, who was a contractor with Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico, and said he was seeing UFOs and aliens above the base. He had enough pull where he was able to make some noise on the base, and they humored him. The official records, I did a FOIA on this, and the official records show they humored him, and they told him, it's not really our cup of tea, go away. Doty says, though, he was ordered to start a whole disinformation campaign. He worked with someone with the DIA, and he... he recruited Bill Moore, who was, kind of a superstar ufologist at the time, who just wrote the book on Roswell with Stanton Friedman's work, of course, breaking the Roswell story. A lot of people don't know. Nobody knew about Roswell till 1980 when this book came out. And finally, in 1989, Bill Moore came clean on this whole thing. The whole time, releasing information, some of it being disinformation, and the disinformation that stems from this period of time, and that's why it's important, is the Majestic 12 documents, the alleged Dulce base, the aviary, all of these kind of cornerstone mythologies that have its basis in admitted disinformation or possibly just completely hoaxed background. So that's why it's really important. I think that really, I'm going to post a letter that I wrote to the Air Force. I don't know.
Okay, can I throw out a question, by the way?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do it.
All right. Now, with all these papers and everything that was done and all the hoaxing that might have been done, who do you think, which part of the government do you think really foot the bill for it to be done? And if someone was a paid disinfo person, where is the money trail? Where's the paper trail that incentivized him or her to make stuff up?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Great question, and we don't have any paper trail, which would lead the evidence, actually, there is no evidence to say that Doty was not doing this all by himself. John Alexander believes, or at least not as a part of his official functions.
Why would he do this by himself, though? I mean,
I think it makes a lot of sense in this field. I mean, unfortunately, as you all know, we have a lot of hoaxers in this field.
Yes, we do. Yeah,
they need to sell more books. They need to plug their books.
Well, but that's not true. Most of the hoaxers are not selling anything. I mean, you look at a lot of these guys. Some of them are, certainly, and I don't want to throw out names because I don't know who you guys feel are hoaxers and who are not. We'd probably.
I have no issues on calling out somebody who I think is a hoaxer, Michael Horn or Billy Myers. But let's not get too into name calling.
But those are good. Okay, you know what? I'll go there. Michael Horn. I don't think he's making a lot of money really off of this. He's making some, and certainly by perpetuating all of this, because I agree with you. He is making some money, but not really much money. I don't think enough to live off of. I know.
Yeah, but
Billy
you got to remember
money off of this either. But they're getting notoriety. They're getting
that's it.
A following, and that's what Doty has gotten. Doty